Picture this, a vast expanse of rugged mountains, their majestic peaks piercing the sky. The air is crisp, carrying the faint whispers of the wilderness. It's the kind of place that beckons adventurers, drawing them in with promises of solitude and serenity. So there I was, a lone wanderer, lured by the allure of the mountain's solitary embrace. Armed with nothing but my backpack and a restless spirit, I embarked on a solo adventure. The thrill of exploration coursed through my veins as I trekked deeper into the heart of this untamed realm. But amidst the breathtaking beauty, an unsettling sensation began to brew. It was as if the very mountains were watching, their silent whispers growing louder with each passing moment. I shrugged it off, attributing it to the eerie yet enchanting ambience of the wilderness. As night fell, I pitched my tent in a secluded clearing, seeking refuge under the starlit sky. That's when things took a spine-chilling turn. Out of nowhere, I heard it, a faint but unmistakable whisper, a voice carried on the wind, calling my name. My heart raced, and a cold sweat trickled down my spine. I was sure I was alone, yet the voice persisted, growing clearer with each repetition. I tried to dismiss it as a trick of the mind, a byproduct of the solitude playing games with my sanity. But then, a rustling echoed from the nearby thicket. Shadows danced in the moonlight, their movements unsettlingly deliberate. My breath hitched as a figure emerged, shrouded in darkness, its features obscured. Panic surged through me, and I bolted from my tent, my pulse pounding in my ears. I sprinted blindly through the wilderness, the haunting voice still echoing behind me, growing louder and more menacing with each step. My mind raced with thoughts of escape, of finding safety in the familiarity of civilization. Just as I thought I couldn't bear it any longer, I stumbled upon a clearing. Relief washed over me as I saw the comforting glow of distant lights, the promise of salvation. But as I turned back to catch my breath, terror gripped me once more. The figure, the voice, it was there, right behind me, its chilling whisper now an icy breath on my neck. And then darkness. A deafening silence enveloped me. The presence vanished into thin air, leaving me standing there trembling and bewildered. But here's the twist, the bone-chilling revelation that'll make your skin crawl. When I finally reached safety and turned to recount my harrowing experience, the locals' faces paled. They spoke in hushed tones of a long-forgotten legend, the spirit of a lost hiker, doomed to wander the mountains, luring unsuspecting souls into the depths of its solitude, never to be seen again. That's when I realized the chilling voice calling my name wasn't a trick of the mind. It was a warning from the other side, a warning I barely escaped. And to this day, the memory of that voice still echoes in the recesses of my mind, a haunting reminder of the unsettling phenomena that lurk within the mountain's serene facade. All right, so imagine this. You're out in the mountains, surrounded by nothing but nature's symphony. The thing is, amidst all that beauty, there's this constant feeling, like eyes are glued to you, watching your every move. You turn, but there's nothing, just the towering trees and the vastness of the landscape. Yet that eerie sensation of being observed never fades. It only grows stronger as the day wears on. Then there are those whispers. Oh boy, those whispers carried by the wind. They're not like your everyday rustling leaves or distant birdsong. No, these are different, almost like they carry secrets, secrets meant for someone's ears only. At first, you brush it off as the breeze playing tricks, but the more you listen, the more you realize they're calling your name, faint yet unmistakable. You start questioning your sanity, wondering if it's just your mind playing tricks on you. But then, when you least expect it, the whispers turn into words, chilling words that send a shiver down your spine. It's as if the wind itself has a voice that knows things it shouldn't, a voice that pierces through the tranquility of the mountains. You try to ignore it, to drown out the unsettling sensation, but it's like an itch you can't scratch, a feeling that gnaws at the edge of your consciousness. You pick up your pace, hoping to outrun the inexplicable unease, but no matter where you go, those whispers, those unseen eyes, they follow. And just when you think it can't get any worse, reality takes a sharp turn. You stumble upon an old, weather-beaten journal in the underbrush. It's aged, its pages yellowed with time. As you flip through, your blood turns cold. The entries speak of someone just like you, someone who felt the eyes, heard the whispers, someone who vanished without a trace, swallowed by the very mountains that now seem to be closing in on you. That's when it hits you, the unsettling truth. You weren't being watched by just anyone or anything. You were being watched by the mountain itself, by a force that lured unsuspecting souls into its grasp, feeding on their fear and solitude. And as the whispers grow louder, you realize you might just be the mountain's next victim, swallowed by its hunger for the lonely wanderers who dare to step foot into its domain. All right, buckle up, because here's where things take a turn into the spine-tingling territory. As I clutched that journal, its pages whispering tales of vanished souls, an eerie sensation crept over me. It wasn't just the whispers anymore. The air itself seemed charged with an otherworldly presence. And then, inexplicable shadows began darting through the trees. Quick, fleeting shapes that vanished before I could make out what they were. My heart raced. I was no longer just an observer. I was knee-deep in something beyond my understanding. I pushed forward, the weight of the journal heavy in my hands, my every step haunted by those elusive shadows. And that's when I stumbled upon it, a clearing adorned with an ancient weathered stone altar bathed in an ominous glow. Symbols etched into its surface seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and a chill ran down my spine. Curiosity mingled with fear as I approached, drawn inexplicably to the mysterious monument. As I touched the rough surface, a shock surged through me, sending me stumbling back. It was as if the very stone held memories it was eager to share, memories that weren't meant for mortal understanding. And then, it hit me like a bolt of lightning, the chilling truth behind the disappearances, the whispers and the watchful eyes. The altar, the shadows, the whispers, it wasn't just a coincidence. They were all connected, pieces of a sinister puzzle, a puzzle that led to one horrifying revelation. I wasn't being hunted by the mountain, nor was it some lost soul seeking vengeance. No, it was something far more ancient, something that had claimed these mountains as its own long before humanity ever set foot here. The shadows were its guardians, the whispers its call, and the altar, an ancient gateway between worlds, a gateway that hungered for souls to sustain its immortal existence. As I stood frozen in terror, the realization dawned upon me. I had stumbled upon a portal to a realm beyond our own, a realm that fed on the fear and solitude of those who dared trespass into its domain. And with that knowledge came the bone-chilling understanding that I was never meant to leave this place, that I had unwittingly become the next offering to the ancient, insatiable entity lurking within the mountains. Okay, this is where things went from eerie to downright bone-chilling. As I stood there, the realization sinking in like a weight on my chest, the air grew thick with an oppressive presence. Shadows twisted and coalesced, forming a shape, a malevolent silhouette that seemed to emanate darkness itself. I was frozen in fear, my mind reeling with the sheer impossibility of what stood before me. This wasn't just a force of nature or some long-forgotten legend. It was a malevolent entity, an ancient being that defied all logic and reason. But survival instincts kicked in. I had to get out to escape this nightmarish realm. With trembling hands, I fumbled for any semblance of a plan. The whispers grew louder, urging me to succumb, to surrender to the entity's will, but I fought against their haunting call. As the malevolent presence loomed closer, I made a desperate dash, my heart pounding with each step. It felt like running through molasses, the air thickening around me, resisting my escape. But I couldn't give up, not now. The shadows clawed at my heels, their touch icy and suffocating. I could almost taste the stale breath of the entity on my neck. Fear threatened to consume me whole, but a flicker of hope surged within, a distant glimmer of survival. I had to make it out to break free from this nightmare. With a final burst of adrenaline, I burst through the thick veil of darkness, stumbling into the blinding light of day. The whispers faded, the shadows dissipated, and I collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air, my body trembling with sheer exhaustion. But here's the twist, the bone-chilling revelation that'll haunt me till my dying day. As I caught my breath and turned to glance back at the mountains, I saw it. The entity's eyes, glowing in the distance, its presence lingering, a silent promise that it wasn't done with me yet. The realization struck me like a thunderbolt. I hadn't escaped. I had only scratched the surface of the malevolent force lurking within those mountains, and it was only a matter of time before it came for me again, dragging me back into its realm of eternal darkness and despair. Just when I thought I had escaped, the horrifying truth dawned on me. I hadn't left the malevolent entity behind. Its eyes, glowing like hot coals, pierced through the distance, fixated on me. It was a gaze that spoke of a chilling inevitability, a fate intertwined with this ancient force that lingered in the very fabric of those mountains. Fear clawed at me, urging me to flee, but something else stirred within, a stubborn defiance, a refusal to be a mere pawn in this malevolent game. I couldn't just run, couldn't let this entity dictate my fate. Summoning every ounce of courage, I turned back, staring into those glowing eyes. The air crackled with an ominous tension as I stood my ground, my heart pounding like a drumbeat echoing through the wilderness. The entity's presence surged, enveloping me in an icy embrace, its malevolence palpable, suffocating. Shadows danced around, whispering tales of ancient horrors and forgotten tragedies. But amidst the chaos, a realization struck, a glimmer of understanding. With a trembling voice, I dared to speak, to address the entity that held me captive in its gaze. I pleaded, bargaining for my freedom, for release from its haunting grip. But the response was not what I expected. The entity's eyes flickered, a semblance of recognition dancing in their depths. It wasn't malice that held me. It was curiosity, a longing for connection in its timeless solitude. It sought not to imprison but to understand, to bridge the gap between its existence and the fleeting mortals that stumbled into its realm. And in that moment of revelation, the air shifted. The malevolent presence wavered, receding into the depths of the mountains, leaving me standing there, shaken but strangely unscathed. But here's the twist that chilled me to the bone. The entity's departure wasn't a sign of freedom. No, it was a sign of something far more unsettling. As it retreated, the mountain itself seemed to come alive, whispers of a different kind now echoing through the air, a call, not of malevolence but of invitation, beckoning me to return, to delve deeper into the enigmatic mysteries that lurked within its embrace. I stumbled away, my mind reeling with the inexplicable events, haunted by the knowledge that I hadn't escaped at all. Instead, I had unwittingly become a part of the mountain's story, forever tethered to its secrets, destined to return and unravel the mysteries that lay dormant in its ancient heart. And as I looked back one last time, the mountains stood silent, their imposing peaks guarding the chilling truth that I was forever entwined with the lurking malevolence that dwelled within. All right, gather round, folks, and lend me your ears. This tale ain't for the faint-hearted, no sir. It all started with the Smith family's camping trip. You see, it was one of those perfect summer days, the kind where the sun sets in hues of orange and red, casting shadows that dance across the trees. The Smiths, Mom, Dad, and their two kids, Sarah and Jake, were all set for a weekend getaway in the woods. They pitched their tent near a serene lake, surrounded by towering trees that rustled in the gentle breeze. As evening fell, we gathered round the crackling fire, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. But as darkness claimed the sky, strange things began to happen. First it was subtle, whispers in the wind that sounded like hushed secrets. The fire flickered unnaturally, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move on their own. Sarah claimed she saw a figure lurking beyond the trees, but we laughed it off as her overactive imagination. Then came the distant sound of footsteps, crunching twigs underfoot. Dad went to investigate, flashlight in hand, disappearing into the darkness. Minutes ticked by, but he didn't return. Panic gripped us as we called out for him, our voices swallowed by the vast silence of the night. Just as we were about to search for him, a blood-curdling scream tore through the air. We rushed towards the sound, hearts pounding. But what we found froze us in terror. There, by the lake, was Dad, standing motionless, his eyes wide open but vacant. He muttered words we couldn't comprehend, his voice distorted and chilling. Sarah and Jake screamed, clutching onto Mom, who was now trembling uncontrollably. Then, in a flash of blinding light, Dad collapsed, and the forest fell into an eerie silence. The flashlight flickered and died, leaving us enveloped in pitch darkness. Fear gnawed at our insides as we huddled together, praying for dawn to break. But when morning finally arrived, Dad was gone. Not a trace remained except for the haunting memory etched into our minds. We fled that place, leaving behind the whispers and the inexplicable horror that befell us that night. And to this day, I can't shake the feeling that something sinister lurks in those woods, waiting for its next unsuspecting victims. As the days passed after that harrowing night, we tried to move on, but the memory lingered like a dark cloud. The youngest Jake was never the same. He'd sit by himself, staring blankly into space, muttering incomprehensible words. We thought it was the trauma, the shock of what had happened to Dad. But things took a turn for the worse. One evening, while Mom was preparing dinner and Sarah was reading, I noticed Jake outside, standing at the edge of the woods. His eyes were fixed on something amidst the trees, an eerie stillness about him. I called out, but he didn't respond, as if he was in a trance. Suddenly, he took a step forward and vanished into the darkness of the woods. We raced outside, shouting his name, but there was no trace of him. Panic surged through us, our hearts pounding louder than the drumming of our feet as we scoured the woods, calling out for Jake. Minutes turned into hours, and the sun began its descent, casting long, menacing shadows. But there was no sign of him. Just when hope was fading, we heard it, the faintest echo of Jake's voice, a hollow whisper carried by the wind. "Come find me," it seemed to say, chilling us to the bone. We followed the sound, stumbling through the underbrush, our hearts pounding in our chests. And then there he was, standing at the water's edge, facing away from us. Relief flooded through me, but as I took a step closer, he turned around. His face was twisted into a grotesque grin, his eyes vacant and lifeless. He raised a finger to his lips, signaling us to be quiet. That's when I noticed something chilling, his shadow. It wasn't his own. It moved independently, elongating into a grotesque shape, reaching out for us. And in that moment of terror, we realized that whatever took Dad and now had Jake wasn't human. We ran, never looking back, leaving behind the woods and the horrors that lurked within. But to this day, I can't shake the feeling that something followed us home, something dark and malevolent, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. In the aftermath of Jake's disappearance, our home became a fortress, each creak of the floorboards, each rustle of the wind outside, a source of dread. But the signs of struggle couldn't be ignored. Strange symbols etched onto the walls in the dead of night, symbols that seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly energy. Mom tried to scrub them away, but they reappeared, darker and more ominous each time. Objects moved on their own, an unseen force rearranging furniture while we slept, creating unsettling patterns. Footsteps echoed through the house when no one else was around, a haunting reminder that we weren't alone. Scratches appeared on the windows, claw-like imprints that sent chills down our spines. But the most unsettling were the whispers, faint yet unmistakable, drifting through the halls, speaking words that made no sense, words from a language not of this world. One night, as I lay awake, consumed by fear, I heard a familiar voice, Jake's voice, coming from the darkness of my room. I turned to find him standing there, his eyes hollow and vacant. Before I could react, he whispered, "They're coming for you," and vanished into thin air. My heart raced as I stumbled out of bed, trying to make sense of what had just happened. But as I glanced in the mirror, I froze. Behind me, reflected in the glass, was a figure, a silhouette of pure darkness, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. It reached out towards me and I felt a chilling coldness envelop me. I turned around, ready to confront the unseen terror, but there was nothing there. Just an empty room shrouded in an eerie silence. That's when I realized it wasn't just Jake who had vanished that night. A piece of me had too, taken by whatever sinister force had infiltrated our lives. And as I stood there, trembling, I knew that we were all marked, forever tethered to the inexplicable horrors that had befallen our family. No matter where we went, no matter how far we tried to run, the signs would follow, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond our reality, waiting for its next victim. As the days dragged on, fear tightened its grip around our family like a vice. The once cozy home now felt like a labyrinth of dread. Every corner held a shadowy secret. Every creak in the night echoed with unseen whispers. Mom tried to keep a brave face, but her eyes betrayed the terror that consumed her. Sarah, usually full of life, became withdrawn, haunted by the memories of what we'd experienced. Confusion settled in, like a fog obscuring our thoughts. We couldn't make sense of the inexplicable events that unfolded, couldn't rationalize the eerie occurrences that plagued us. The line between reality and nightmare blurred, leaving us teetering on the edge of sanity. We sought answers, but each attempt only deepened the mystery, plunging us further into the abyss of fear. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in hues of purple, a chill crept into the house. The temperature dropped inexplicably, and a strange fog seeped in, shrouding everything in an unsettling haze. I heard Sarah's panicked voice calling out, and as I rushed to her room, I saw it. The walls, adorned with symbols glowing an ominous shade of red. We tried to leave, to escape the malevolent force that had ensnared us, but the doors wouldn't budge, the windows wouldn't open. Trapped within our own home, we huddled together, our breaths coming in shallow gasps, our hearts racing in terror. That's when it happened. A deafening roar, a cacophony of unearthly sounds reverberated through the walls. Shadows danced wildly, contorting into grotesque shapes. And then, in a flash of blinding light, everything went silent. I opened my eyes to find myself alone. The house was empty, devoid of life, devoid of any trace of my family. Panic surged through me as I stumbled outside, only to be greeted by an empty street. The neighbors' houses stood silent and deserted, a ghostly echo of what once was. And as I stood there, a chilling realization dawned upon me. Whatever had haunted us had taken not just my family, but everyone around us. The world was a desolate wasteland, swallowed by the same darkness that had devoured us. I was truly alone, trapped in a nightmarish reality with no escape. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting elongated shadows across the dense woodland, our group of campers finally arrived at Cedar Hollow Campground. The air was thick with a damp chill, the trees looming like silent sentinels, and the crackling of the campfire was the only solace in the encroaching darkness. We set up our tents amidst nervous laughter and exchanged spooky tales to set the mood. I shared a story about the legend of Old Man Jenkins, who was said to haunt these very woods, preying on unsuspecting wanderers. As night fell, the campfire's glow danced eerily, casting flickering shadows that seemed to twist and contort with every gust of wind. The darkness outside the circle of light became impenetrable, and rustling leaves and snapping twigs sent shivers down our spines. That's when strange things started happening. Objects went missing only to reappear in bizarre places. A sense of foreboding hung thick in the air, and nervous glances were exchanged among us. As we huddled closer to the fire, trying to shrug off the feeling of unease, a sudden blood-curdling scream pierced the night. Panic set in, and we fumbled for flashlights, hearts pounding with fear. Racing towards the source, we found an empty tent, its fabric torn and a cold wind whistling through the flaps. Fearing the worst, we searched frantically, calling out into the night, but our friend was nowhere to be found. Dread settled like a stone in our stomachs as we realized the terrifying truth. The legend of Old Man Jenkins wasn't just a story, it was real. Just as we contemplated our next move, a haunting voice echoed from the darkness, whispering words that froze our blood. "Welcome to my playground," it hissed, sending chills down our spines. And then, from the depths of the woods, emerged a figure shrouded in darkness, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. We stumbled backward in terror, realizing too late that we had wandered into a nightmare. As the figure drew closer, a sudden flash of light illuminated its face, revealing it to be our missing friend, wearing a mask and cackling with twisted glee. It was a prank gone horribly wrong, but the relief was short-lived as a bone-chilling realization sunk in. If our friend was here all along, then who or what was that voice that greeted us from the shadows? The revelation sent shivers down our spines, and we huddled together, haunted by the unanswered question. The night seemed to hold its breath, the darkness enclosing us in its chilling embrace, leaving us with an unsettling feeling that some mysteries are better left unsolved. As we sat there, shivering despite the warmth of the fire, stories circulated about eerie discoveries others had made in these woods. One camper swore they saw spectral visitors wandering among the trees, their ghostly forms fading in and out of sight. Another spoke of tragic events that had unfolded here decades ago, a tale of lost souls forever trapped in Cedar Hollow. I dismissed these stories as mere campfire tales meant to spook us in the dead of night. But as the fire crackled and shadows danced around us, a sense of unease settled in. The woods seemed to come alive with whispered secrets, and every rustle of leaves made my heart skip a beat. Then it happened. A faint, ghostly figure materialized just beyond the reach of the fire's glow. My breath caught in my throat as I stared, unable to look away. The figure shimmered in the darkness, its eyes locking with mine before vanishing into the night. Panic gripped us, and we huddled together, trying to rationalize what we had seen. But before we could make sense of it, a series of mournful wails echoed through the forest, chilling us to the bone. It was as if the woods themselves were mourning some long-forgotten tragedy, and the sound sent shivers down our spines. Just as we began to calm our racing hearts, a sudden commotion erupted nearby. Rushing towards the source, we stumbled upon a scene straight out of a nightmare, a clearing littered with remnants of a bygone era. Torn clothing lay scattered, a rusty locket glinted in the firelight, and a weathered journal revealed snippets of a tragic tale. But the true horror came when we discovered an old photograph, faces frozen in time, mirroring our own group. Cold realization dawned upon us as we realized that the figures we saw in the woods were not specters of the past, but harbingers of our own fate. A bone-chilling dread settled over us, and the forest seemed to close in, suffocating us with its secrets. The chilling twist was not in the spectral visitors or the tragic events of the past. It was the realization that the spirits we encountered were not of the dead, but of the living, trapped in an endless loop of horror destined to repeat itself. And as the night wore on, we understood that our fate was now intertwined with the haunting history of Cedar Hollow, leaving us to wonder if we would ever escape its chilling grasp. As we stood there, Frozen in disbelief, the realization sank in like an icy hand clutching at our hearts. The photograph, worn and faded, depicted us, our group, posed exactly as we were sitting around the crackling fire moments ago. Every detail matched, down to the smallest expression etched on our faces. Questions swirled in our minds. How could this be? Was it some elaborate prank? But the eerie sightings we'd experienced felt too real, too hauntingly authentic to dismiss as a mere joke. A sense of foreboding intensified, gnawing at our sanity. The woods whispered ancient secrets, and the mournful wails echoed louder, seeming to seep into our very souls. The air grew thick with an unspoken terror, and we realized our reality had shifted into something far beyond our comprehension. Then, with a sudden bone-chilling certainty, it struck us. We were not just witnessing the past, we were reliving it. The spectral visitors, the tragic events, these were not isolated occurrences, but a cyclic torment destined to ensnare anyone who dared trespass upon this cursed ground. In a frantic attempt to break free from the suffocating grasp of Cedar Hollow, we sprinted through the labyrinth of trees, branches clawing at our faces as if trying to drag us back into the abyss. But no matter how far or fast we ran, the clearing with the haunting remnants awaited us, each time with more clues from our own lives frozen in time. The bone-chilling twist revealed itself in the realization that escape was an illusion. We were trapped in an endless loop, condemned to relive the terror of Cedar Hollow for eternity. Our fate intertwined with the spirits of the past, bound by forces beyond our understanding, forever etched into the fabric of this sinister place. As the night wore on, our panicked screams dissolved into haunting echoes, merging seamlessly with the mournful cries of those who had met a similar fate before us. And in the chilling silence that followed, the chilling truth dawned upon us. We were not the first, and we certainly wouldn't be the last to fall victim to the curse of Cedar Hollow. As the night wore on, the chilling reality sunk its icy claws deeper into our minds. We were caught in a race against time, desperate to avoid becoming permanent residents of this haunting ground. Every step we took felt like a plunge into a bottomless pit, the echoes of our own fear reverberating through the eerily still forest. Panic coursed through our veins, urging us to break free from this sinister trap. We tried everything, running, screaming, even pleading with the unseen forces that held us captive. But the more we struggled, the tighter the grip of Cedar Hollow became, its darkness seeping into our very beings. In a frenzied attempt to outwit the malevolent forces, we retraced our steps, hoping against hope to find an exit, a way to break free from this nightmarish loop. But each time we reached the clearing, it was as if time itself mocked our futile efforts, presenting us with more fragments of our own lives frozen in a spectral embrace. Fear gnawed at our sanity, and the haunting wails grew louder, drowning out our cries for help. It was as though the woods hungered for our souls, craving our fear as sustenance for its eternal existence. And then, in a bone-chilling twist that sent shivers down our spines, we realized the horrifying truth. We were not just participants in this haunting, we were the architects of our own demise. Our fear, our desperation, fueled the very energy that bound us to this cursed place, perpetuating the cycle of terror. In a sickening realization, we understood that our only escape was to break free from the grip of fear itself. But as the night stretched endlessly, the chilling thoughts settled in. We were doomed to forever roam Cedar Hollow, eternally feeding the malevolent force that held us captive, trapped in a never-ending loop of our own making. And as the darkness swallowed us whole, our desperate screams echoed into the abyss, a warning to any who dared wander into the chilling depths of Cedar Hollow. The night lingered, an unending cloak of darkness wrapping around us. Our pleas for escape dissolved into hollow echoes, lost in the abyss of Cedar Hollow. The haunting whispers of the past intertwined with our own desperate cries, merging into a symphony of eternal torment. In the depths of that endless night, time lost its meaning. We were condemned to wander, mere phantoms trapped in a labyrinth of our own fear. The chilling truth dawned upon us. We had become part of the haunting, forever entangled in the sinister fabric of Cedar Hollow. As the last embers of hope flickered and faded, our voices faded into the silent embrace of the woods, leaving behind an ominous warning. For those who dare venture into the depths of Cedar Hollow, beware, a chilling fate awaits, and the haunting echoes of our despair linger on, a testament to the unyielding grip of this cursed place.